Hi, I'm Professor Green, and let's talk about make or buy decisions. So, it's a little cold here in the Czech Republic over Christmas. Let's talk about decisions about whether to perform a certain value in-house or to outsource it, right? It's science when it comes to supply chain. The main factors are cost and production capacity. So those are like the big ideas, but then there's some other smaller factors that we always want to consider as well. Product success, which is if the item is critical to the success of the product, then you probably want to make it yourself just to make sure that it's done correctly. Maybe there's specialized knowledge, maybe only you or a certain supplier know about how to create this particular product. Is there strategic fit? So if the item fits in with the firm's core competencies, if like you're making a similar product already in-house, then you might want to do that in-house, or you might want to outsource it to a supplier who does a similar product at their firm, at their factory. Cost and production capacity. We'll talk a little bit about this in the next couple of slides. Also, do you have enough space in your factory, in your warehouse to store this? Because that is also a cost when we talk about fixed cost. Supplier competencies, right? Is the supplier good enough to make this item? And inventory planning, another piece of making sure that you have enough warehouses. So let's go ahead and talk about these next two slides when they talk about they're two different flow charts favoring a make or a buy decision. And kind of as a side note, right? Strategically, firms look at this from a long-term view, but operationally, you really are looking at this from a more short-term view. So let's talk about a make decision. So here you have a cost. You're going to make it in-house. You want to have some quality control. So you're saying that you want to make sure that you can oversee all of the production of this entire product. Maybe there's proprietary knowledge that you don't want anybody else to know about how to make this product. Maybe there are limited suppliers that can make this product, so you don't have much choice. You have excess capacity. There's a lot of warehouse space where you could store this product when it's done. You have a lot of control. Similar, there's assurance of continual supply because you control the supply, and also you don't have to depend on transportation or getting the product from a supplier overseas. And maybe there's some other industry drivers that come along with that, such as COVID and political issues, et cetera. So then that ends up here that you should make the product because you have capacity for the production. But if you're looking at buying a decision, this flow chart goes like this, that maybe you have a multi-source policy. You outsource a lot of things. So you have the system set up to track and cooperate and work with different vendors. Maybe you have a lack of expertise when it comes to creating this product. There's some supplier competencies. I had a friend, he made like really high-end earplugs about 10 years ago. And he, of course, outsourced that to China because he was just a guy who worked in marketing and in consulting out of Washington, D.C. He had no expertise in making earplugs. He was really relying on the factories and the people in China to help him with that. Maybe there's small volumes. Exactly. He, was just making, a couple hundred batches at a time. The inventory planning, he didn't have any warehouse to store these things. Maybe there's a brand preference. So maybe that there's a brand that the end user wants to see, like the Intel chips we were saying. Only the chips really a lot of people like to see on their computer, right? Made by Intel. So they're going to outsource the making of those chips to Intel, even if they can make the chips themselves. And the last piece of favoring a buy decision is that it's also a non-essential item in the chance that you can't get it, right? And the chance that there's a pandemic or there's an issue with transportation, et cetera, because you have a little bit less control when you buy it. So that ends you up here at the production capacity. But if both seem positive, buy and make, you're going to go ahead and choose the best one, the one the one that has the best strategic fit with the least opportunity cost, right? Because a lot of these decisions really are, kind of down to the wire. And I know firsthand, because as I said, I did a lot of these projects in business school, and one of my best friends from Thunderbird does this as her full-time job. So when we talk about the global logistics, what are the core activities of logistics, just to make sure they're all familiar with them? With the terminology. The next couple of slides are going to talk about this. We're going to talk about global distribution center management, inventory management, packaging and materials. Again, you never thought you'd need to know about all these vocabulary terms, but you will now learn them. Transportation and reverse logistics. So the first one, global distribution center management. What this is a warehouse. In other words, it's a facility that positions and allows customization of products to deliver to wholesalers, directly to the consumer. It's at a foundation of a global supply network. You definitely will need a warehouse. Even my friend who's making the earplugs, his earplugs were stored in some warehouse somewhere. The next thing is the global inventory management. So this is the decision-making process regarding, okay, where are you going to get the plastic for the earplugs? Where are you going to get the different type of plastic for the container, et cetera. And then the finished goods inventory. So this is how much to hold. This is where you decide how much you want to hold, in what form, and where you're going to hold that. Then we have packaging, and I like this slide because it's kind of new technology. I mean, a new vocabulary to me, at least, because I never had to get into like really the nitty. I never really worked in a warehouse. Did kind of for a vitamin company, but I wasn't packaging the things. I was doing the marketing and social media for them. So the first one is the primary packaging that holds the product itself. Right. My friend who has the earplugs, he had these like really nice aluminum little small mini canisters that held the earplugs. The secondary packaging contains several primary packages. So now all these aluminum containers go in a box for the most part. And then you have transit packaging, which is most often a pallet. It's used to transport the primary and secondary packages. And the functions of packaging are to perform, protect, and inform. So perform, right, to make sure that they hold all these things together, to protect the things, make sure that they don't get damaged. And one of my favorites, because it's so important, again, I know I have so many favorites, but all this stuff is pretty exciting. Informing, right? You want a label on that box, on that pallet, telling the person where it's coming or where it's going. Just like when you check your luggage, really important that you get a baggage claim ticket to tell the person where to take your luggage when you check your luggage. Now let's talk about transportation, the different types of transportation. Again, it's a science, right? So the transportation obviously is the movement of raw material, parts, finished goods throughout the supply chain. It's the largest percentage of any logistics budget. You'll hear us throughout this course. We're mentioning again and again and again. You can't forget about transportation costs. In the first couple of chapters, we did just to simplify the equation, but at the end of the day, there are always transportation costs. Ocean is the least expensive because you can get so many things on one ship. And air, because you're defying gravity, is the most expensive. In between there, we have land, which includes rail, which is less expensive than going by truck. Also, to remind ourselves again of this last piece, reverse logistics. And I think of this when I think of Amazon. They make it so easy to return things. And I don't know how they do it, right? Because there's so much cost that goes into returning a product. This is the process of moving inventory from the point of consumption to the point of origin. So recapturing the value or disposing of the product. And you want to optimize this aftermarket activity and make it more efficient because, as I said, it can be so costly. Yeah, as I said, Amazon seems to be doing quite well with that because they continue to, for the most part, not charge us unless we make the process more difficult for them, right? When you go to return something on Amazon, it says, drop off at a UPS store, have it picked up from your house, like all these different options, like the first one or two, usually your free UPS store But if you bring it to like another type of store, then they're going to charge you because that takes money then to for them to pick that up. Let's now talk about the 5 strategic levels of global purchasing. And again, there are people that do this for a full-time job who are purchasing agents. And they spend all day long, their whole career, focusing on how they're going to buy these things. And when I worked for a Citibank, for example, or the general contractor, we had large groups called purchasing because they focused on where we're going to get the product. So at Citibank, for example, we had huge contracts with IBM for laptops, and they would, make the deals, figure out how many laptops we needed, what versions, et cetera. Where are we getting these laptops? When we talk about the construction industry, then we also talk about in-house laptops, but we're also talking about concrete. We're also talking about steel, et cetera, et cetera. So level 1 is domestic purchasing activities only. This is kind of, small potatoes in my world. But the example that they give in the book is, a Michigan, store is buying cherries from somebody in Michigan. Simple story. Level 2, this is international purchasing only as needed. So this is more of a reactive type of situation. If they can't get the product domestically, then they will reach out and get that from abroad. My mother, for example, she has a lot of cosmetics. She was a fashion model. And so, not that she's an organization, but the idea is the same, that if she can't get a particular cosmetic in the US, then she will reach out and get that abroad. Level 3, international purchasing is a part of the firm's overall supply chain management strategy. So this is now, yes, buying things from abroad on a more regular basis. Yes, we like to supply things. We like to purchase things from abroad. Maybe this is there's a European market in Torrance, for example, and they have all of their products mostly from Germany. And it's an amazing store. It's huge. And they have so many different products from, soups to cookies to meats to cheeses. It just goes on and on. Then we have global purchasing activities that are integrated across the firm's locations worldwide. And so now this is where we have multiple locations. So we're talking more like IKEA, for example, and they're purchasing things from abroad and bringing them to their different locations around the world. And then level 5, one of my favorites because it is so international and complex, they're integrated across world locations and functional groups. And I think of Tesco in this instance because they have, so many locations. Products are coming from so many locations. It's just a whole complex thing. And I suspect that their purchasing departments are thousands, hundreds, probably I'd have to Google it, but I'd suggest tens of thousands of people. So let's talk about the outsourcing terms and options here. Just so we're all clear and on the same page with what these options are. So outsourcing, right? This is when an MNC, a multinational corporation, buys from one of its suppliers elsewhere, domestically, that produces it elsewhere domestically or globally. Insourcing, this is where the MNC decides to stop outsourcing and decides to produce them internally. Offshoring, right? This is a little bit different. Sometimes we confuse the two. Offshoring is where the MNC buys the services from one of its suppliers that produces them somewhere globally, outside of the MNC's country. And then we have offshore outsourcing. So this is where the MNC buys the services from one of its suppliers in a country other than one in which the product is manufactured or the service is developed, right? And so again, it's like two stages of the process. Then we have nearshoring. This is where the MNC works with the supplier in a nearby country, maybe one that shares a border, maybe something that we get from Canada or Mexico. And then co-sourcing. This is where um, the MNC uses both its employees from inside the firm and an external supplier to perform certain tasks together. So this applies to all four forms of purchasing strategy, as we spoke about, and can happen, right, especially when there's a joint venture or something like this. So efficient supply chain management. Let's go ahead and stop here, and I'll start a new video for the last handful of slides.